So it's been about a week since Deadpool and Wolverine. I've given plenty of time to other people to have seen it by now, and there's so much ground to cover with this one, so it's going to be impossible for me to cover every single detail. Mostly, my thoughts are going to be about the cameos and the variants involving certain characters, and how I think it kind of takes away from the momentum of the emotional weight that's present in the opening and in the finale of the film. Nevertheless, though, I think this is a really good time. It fits the Deadpool mold that we've come to expect by now after the last two movies. This is your last warning. I'm going to talk about almost everything with this movie, mostly with the cameos, like I said, and a few other things. So, Henry Cavill, Wesley Snipes, Jennifer Garner, Chris Evans, Human Torch. My apologies. So, if you thought that Spider-Man No Way Home was crazy with showing Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, or even Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness with Charles Xavier, Patrick Stewart, John Krasinski's Mr. Fantastic, this is basically all that on steroids. So with Deadpool dragged onto this adventure to stop this incursion, or this evaporation of his universe from the TVA, he goes through all these different timelines to find the one variant of Wolverine that he needs. All the Wolverine variants he encounters, from really old man Logan sitting on his porch with a shotgun in his lap, mini Logan, which a lot of people have talked about how Hugh Jackman's too tall to play Wolverine. I don't care about his height. That's the extreme bare minimum when it comes to a character like this. By the way, Huey Lewis' Power of Love was playing during that whole montage, and that's just... movie does not care at all. It's very unapologetic, which I really like. Even showing us a glimpse of the Hulk fighting the Wolverine. Oh man, can you imagine if that was Mark Ruffalo's Hulk? I would have lost my freaking mind. The crowning jewel of that whole montage, though, was when we see a variant of Wolverine working on his motorcycle, turns around, and it's Henry Cavill, the Cavalrine. When he turned around, I went crazy. I'm not the only one to say this, but cast Henry Cavill as Wolverine. I would see that in a heartbeat. After the way DCEU did him dirty as Superman, Marvel could be exactly what he needs. Ryan Reynolds said it best: we will treat you better than those you-know-what's down the street. But he finds the Hugh Jackman Wolverine that we have seen in the trailers, and this is a Wolverine who has a very different type of struggle that he deals with. Very despondent and reserved and cut off. Doesn't really want to let anybody in until we learn that he let his whole world down by not being there when his friends at Charles Xavier's mansion were killed. I do wish that we saw a flashback of some kind with that, but at the same time, I do kind of like how it was left to the audience's imagination, where it was sure to be a lot more terrifying. And it's all conveyed perfectly through Hugh Jackman's portrayal. I cannot stress this enough. Hugh Jackman is one hell of a team player. Even though I am really happy that they didn't undo the ending of Logan, I was still more than happy to see Hugh Jackman return. I guess with the multiverse now being a thing, him coming back as a variant was the appropriate excuse. His interplay with Ryan Reynolds feels like the perfect mesh of seriousness and not so seriousness. The way they just bounce off each other so viciously sometimes, especially that fight they have in the car where they're ripping each other to shreds, including the interior of that car. Not to mention, I think it was before that fight happened, I'm With You by Avril Lavigne is playing. I guess given Ryan Reynolds' nationality, he's from Canada, it makes sense that we have a fellow Canadian contributing to the soundtrack. And let me tell you, that song takes me right back to my 6th grade and middle school days. I adore that song. So Wade, Logan, thank you for actually making me want to revisit that song again. And before I forget, we also get Nice Pool, which is the opposite attitude of Wade Wilson. Kind of oblivious to everything that's going on, or just actually, I would say, aloof. And it turns out he doesn't have any type of regenerative healing factor. Because towards the finale, when we see all those variants of Deadpool, he gets brutally murdered to bits. And I was not shocked, but at the same time I was. I thought, oh, poor guy. It's a Deadpool movie, I guess you wouldn't expect anything different. Oh yeah, and Lady Pool, turns out it was Blake Lively. I knew it had to be her or either Taylor Swift, because they're friends with Taylor Swift in real life, Ryan and Blake. So I thought, okay, who is this one, the Blake or the Taylor? So I Tony Stark. I just realized. I'm sorry, do I get the patch of the eye? I am really tired right now, guys, so just bear with me. I'm trying my best to remember all the details. Oh, and speaking of music, when they showed NSYNC's Bye 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 in that opening credit sequence where he's using the skeleton of Logan to fight off the TVA soldiers, never have I ever been so happy to hear a song from my childhood be brought back to the forefront over 30 years later. Go on YouTube and even Apple Music. They have the title of the song within parentheses from Deadpool and Wolverine. That tells you how much impact it's going to have for years to come. They obviously knew younger audiences would be interested in that song, so they made the right choice. Cassandra Nova, who's the main antagonist, is the twin sister of Charles Xavier. I called her basically the female version of Charles Xavier in my spoiler-free review, but that's literally because she is. She's blood related to him. I don't know which variant she's related to, maybe in another universe that we haven't seen, but she was kind of like the hammy, I'm the villain type of character who wants to control all of time. In the case of Deadpool, I don't really have high expectations for villain motivations. Cable's motivation in the sequel, Deadpool 2, I think was probably the best use of that. Francis in Deadpool 1, he was there to just be a target for Wade Wilson. So, like I said, not really high expectations for Deadpool villains, to be honest. And whenever she would stick her hand in somebody's body or mind,
I feel cheap and violated.
And the one character we're introduced to right when we meet Cassandra Nova, Chris Evans shows up as the Human Torch. When they run into him in the desert wasteland after they see the broken 20th Century Fox logo, he's wearing this cloaked hood, and from his voice, I could tell that it was Chris Evans, and I thought, he's going to be Human Torch, isn't he? But then I thought, no, maybe a Captain America variant? They wouldn't do the Human Torch, would they? Will they? And he was prepping up his words, and Ryan Reynolds was getting all excited. Okay, here it comes, he's going to say it. At first I thought, all right, I could do this all day. But as soon as he said flame on, I lost my damn mind. I literally went, yes! I needed more of him. I was so bummed that he was only in there for like 5 minutes. His death scene when Cassandra Nova rips his skin off and he's just a big heap of muscle and skeleton. Yeah, that hurt. That really hurt. But I just love seeing Chris Evans come back as the Human Torch. I think most people would agree with his appearance in the Fantastic Four films that he was in. Similar to Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan in the prequel trilogy. They would look at that and go, yeah, okay, that's alright. Everything else, not so much. You know, I figured that Chris Evans was going to make a return to the character of Johnny Storm because I had an envision in my head that Doctor Strange would see him and go, Cap? We are still in the multiverse, so never say never. Oh, and did I mention that Sabretooth from the original X-Men makes an appearance and fights off against Hugh Jackman? Oh, that was quite a sight. Even Pyro from X-Men 2 shows up. They literally brought almost everybody from the 20th Century Fox side of the comic book genre, dating all the way back to the year 2000. Well, actually, I take that back, the late 90s. Segueing right into the appearance of Jennifer Garner as Elektra, Channing Tatum as Gambit, and Wesley Snipes as Blade the Vampire Hunter. I read last year that Jennifer Garner would make an appearance of some kind. As I read that, I thought, this movie is getting crazier by the minute. Then Channing Tatum shows up, and some people in the audience were getting like really amped up. They thought, oh my god! And I realized, oh, that's right. He was supposed to play Gambit at one point in time. And then when Wesley Snipes showed up, I went, you're kidding me. No way. Just getting this out of the way, me being the typical guy that I am, seeing Jennifer Garner show up as Elektra once again.
Please. Oh, my heart! My heart!
I don't know how any of you guys feel about her as Elektra or anybody else. I always thought she was fine. I didn't really have a problem with her. It was just, unfortunately, she was saddled into some not-so-good movies. I don't really remember liking the Elektra solo film that much. Daredevil, we'll save that for later. They mention Matt Murdock in this one, and Wade Wilson apologizes for mentioning him, and she goes, no, it's fine. I couldn't help but wonder, was that like a subtle jab on her part since, if you guys don't know, she was married to Ben Affleck for a little while, for about maybe a decade, and then they ended up getting divorced, and now he's with Jennifer Lopez. Maybe that was a jab at him, I have no idea, and I didn't really see Ben Affleck wanting to make an appearance as Daredevil. I think he's kind of steered away from the comic book genre. I don't think he really wants to come back to any of that ever again, so whatever. As for Channing Tatum as Gambit, from what we see of him, I was kind of impressed. I'll be honest, I'm not really a big Channing Tatum fan. I think he's alright, but personally, he's never really done it for me. This is one of the few times where I think he's, at the very least, bearable or tolerable. If this is all we're gonna get from Channing Tatum as Gambit, I'm fine with it. There's too much time that's passed, and Marvel's already far along with moving into the next phase of rebooting with the X-Men. But I did like how they were willing to acknowledge at least that one fan idea that they had in mind. As for Wesley Snipes as Blade, I've seen the first two Blades. I didn't get to Blade Trinity yet. I'm not really into vampire stuff, and it's different. I will admit, those movies, but I'll save those for another discussion. Wesley Snipes most definitely fits the mold. And with him saying that there's only one Blade, depending on how the next movie goes, don't be too sure of that. He also says how some mother effers try to ice skate uphill. Some things never do change. But as much as I love seeing these cameos, unfortunately that's probably the only issue I have with this movie, is that it kind of, it actually does take away from a lot of the momentum that we could have gotten with Wade Wilson trying to reconnect with everybody else that he hasn't really seen in 8 years. Maybe we even get to see him being interviewed by Jon Favreau, Happy Hogan. I guess at some point in the timeline it takes place around Civil War, or maybe after, I don't know exactly, and how he wants to feel like he matters, Wade Wilson. Since he hung up the Deadpool costume, he now feels like he's not worth anything. But he has his wife who tries to tell him that no, you have to find something worthwhile. Due to his inability to move on, they ended up splitting apart. I do like how by the end of the movie it's paid off. I just wish that we had more time to focus on that stuff, because Cassandra Nova does go inside his head. She sees that he feels like that she, Vanessa, called him worthless or not worth anything. I think it was really his fears that Cassandra Nova was digging into. With all of the deflecting with humor that Deadpool is known for, breaking the fourth wall and all that other stuff, I do like seeing some of the humanity underneath. But given that it's a Deadpool movie and that he likes to focus on his humorous stuff a lot of the time, I guess it does make sense, but maybe just a little focus on that would have helped. The real emotional weight is what we get with Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, and his conversation with X-23, who is now reprised by Daphne Keane from Logan. Always nice to see her back. And yes, we have to mention that Wolverine wears the full yellow costume. Only took about 24 years for him to finally put on that mask. And I heard a couple people giggling or snickering with excitement, and me, I thought, well, I guess it was worth the wait, right? There's probably a lot more stuff that I'm forgetting about, but I really did have a good time with Deadpool and Wolverine. If you're somehow still ragging on this because of how tired you are of the MCU post-Endgame, I mean, if you want to write it off and not even give it any more time, go watch something else. Don't even waste your time. It's definitely an adrenaline boost that the MCU needed at this point. And based on the recent announcements from the Comic-Con event from Marvel, it could possibly be a step back in the right direction. And I think it would be kind of meta to talk about the last time that we saw Deadpool on the big screen, a couple years before COVID hit, and now so much time has gone by where everything's been shuffled around and pushed back. At least I got the impression that, oh yeah, haven't seen you guys in a while.
It's been a while.
But yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine does pull off what it's trying to do to the point where I go, okay, I'm more than satisfied with it. So that's really all I gotta say about Deadpool and Wolverine. Thank you guys so much for watching. Comment below and tell me what some of your favorite moments were in this movie. Who was your favorite cameo, favorite funny line, or favorite song in the soundtrack? And if there's any other stuff I can miss, you could just let me know down below. Thanks again, guys, and as always, see you in the next one.